Councilman Bob Holden, City Councilman representing parts of Queens. Councilman, thanks for coming in live in the studio, sir.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be here once again.
And Frankie says we should take full credit for you winning. It was 100, what, how many votes?
137.
And every single one of them, morning show listeners right here on the station, I think. But it's okay.
So I owe you everything, Joe. I really do. Frankie, too.
You have us to blame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, yes. It's a long haul. 7 days a week I work.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you very much for that.
It's like when you work in the city, man. It's like a country. The city's so big. Thanks for wearing a tie. I mean, I said that dead Cox earlier. Thanks for dressing up a little bit.
Well, I'm old school.
Me too, but no, you're looking very dapper, young man. Come on now. You got
young man.
Come
well,
on.
Thank you very much for that one.
Hey, I'll tell you. It's all right now. Councilman, before you were elected last year, you were a longtime civic leader in Queens. Tell us about, can I tell you, first of all, I want to hear your thoughts on Amazon, but tell us about, first and foremost, the homeless shelters. If someone works their whole life to build and go to a community and then spend the money and pay the taxes in New York, City, and then the mayor goes, okay, we're putting some a homeless shelter right next. Shouldn't the folks in that community have a right to say something?
Of course. People save for 20 years to buy a home, and they work hard every day. I represent mostly a middle-class neighborhood. These are people who pay their taxes, do their jobs, go to work, don't cause trouble, and all of a sudden the mayor comes in and says, we're going to put 200 men in this shelter. And by the way, it's out of character because it's a very large building. Most of my district is 1- and 2-family homes. So you're going to put a very large shelter, 200 men, with about 25% of them have serious mental illnesses. So that's a huge problem, and people are obviously upset. I don't believe any large homeless shelter works. I think they should be more faith-based, which under Bloomberg, it was like that. It was until he kind of did away with that. So I'm looking at smaller facilities, 12 to 15 homeless, where actually the churches can get involved in this.
It's great what Cardinal Dolan announced yesterday, that they have all that land in the Catholic Church, and they're going to dedicate that to low-income housing. Could you turn that over to homeless?
Yeah, they could do that, or affordable housing, and get people straightened out. Listen, we'll take care of our own. In our neighborhoods, we'll take care of our own homeless. The problem is when we're getting homeless from Rikers or other prisons around the state, and they're using homeless shelters now as halfway houses, and that's a problem.
Yes.
That's a huge problem.
And you feel bad. You see the homeless down here. It's Gerald Noddle's district, and it's great. Thank you for thinking of this, by the way, because at least you're concerned with this. You're protecting the citizens that pay the taxes, and then you want to help the homeless. But did you see them all around Wall Street? What is with that?
Yes, and again, I think the city has to get more aggressive, and there's a state law actually signed by George Pataki, my friend, actually.
We love George. George is a good guy.
In 1999, Kendra's Law, which was Kendra Webdale was standing on a platform in 1999 and was pushed by somebody who was off their meds, who was in and out of jail, and she was pushed in front of a subway train and killed, obviously. And this law was really to step in, and if there are people who with serious mental illness, they could be committed based on a petition to the courts. If they're in and out of jail many times, or they're homeless on the street, we can actually put them in an institution, which it's actually not being used. Kendra's Law is not being used to its fullest.
That's great. Could you explain to us this Uniform Land Use Review procedure? What exactly is that ULURP that we hear about?
Well, that's really a year-long process where the city, all the community board weighs in, the city councilman, the borough president, and obviously the city council, all to actually approve a building, a city-owned building. So it's about a year-long process.
But the homeless shelters don't have to go through that, apparently.
No.
Yeah, and we're talking to Queens. What do you think about Amazon stepping out? Did you back that Amazon coming to Long Island City?
Well, I didn't like that they bypassed the New York City Council, and that's the only thing we didn't like.
Well, tell us about that for a second. They bypassed, Jeff Bezos bypassed the city council.
Well, it was actually the mayor and the governor got together and said, we're not going to involve the city council, and we're going to just, at this point, approve this. And it wasn't transparent, and I think if it had gone through the city council, or at least involved the speaker, Corey Johnson, in the discussions, and they shut him out, and they shut the whole city council out. So I didn't like that, but I do like the jobs.
Yeah.
And Amazon would have been a good, I think, obviously a good tenant there, and many jobs would have been obviously 25,000 or more. It's very important to have businesses, but in that location, I don't know, on the water. I spoke to Amazon and said if you had a ferry there and would get your employees through the ferry, that might be a good idea, because the number 7 line, my daughter can't get on the 7 line now.
Yeah, right. That's so very true. But just to reiterate, so you think that Mayor De Blasio and Governor Cuomo, they didn't work with the local politicians? If they did, that deal may have gone through.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Wow. That's from Councilman Bob Holden. With Piscopo in the morning, Frankie Five Boroughs is here as well with Al. And I also have to ask you about your city council colleague, if I may, Councilman Kalman Yeager. Today, your colleagues in the city council are going to remove Councilman Yeager from the immigration committee. How are you going to vote, sir? I'm
going to vote no, that they shouldn't remove him. Free speech is still alive in this country. And I did speak to Kalman, and I said, again, it was a private Twitter account, and he said a fact, and it wasn't popular with many colleagues, and I just think it's wrong to remove somebody just for stating an opinion.
And I know you're a registered Democrat, but you were elected as a Republican, probably because of us. I'm just saying.
Yes, because of you.
I know we're like
Thank you very much.
We're libertarians, but sure, we'll take it. We'll take it.
Listen, I go with listen. I've been a Democrat all my life because my father was.
Yeah, I hear that, man. I hear that. Yeah,
I never changed. Yeah. But again, I work with Republicans, Democrats.
God bless you for that.
And there's very few of us around.
You're not going to switch to GOP, right?
No, I have no plans.
You couldn't do that. You couldn't make it a Republican. You couldn't write that down.
No, I could. And again, I thought about it. I'm still thinking about it, but I'm comfortable where I am. And again, I don't identify with either party. It's unusual, but I go with
Welcome to the club.
Each issue, I'll look at each issue and I'll vote accordingly.
Yeah. Councilman Bob Holden, great conversation. Just so we can reiterate, and Frankie, you want to make this clear, what you're going to do going in and helping. How do you stop the mayor from putting the homeless next to people who are paying such high taxes and don't have any say in who comes into the neighborhood, sir?
Well, I want to see that procurement. So before they sign contracts with these not-for-profits, I think the city council person should be at the table, at least talking about their districts. This might work here, it might work there, it could be smaller, like I've been doing with Stephen Banks, who's the commissioner of the Department of Homeless Services, and he's doing a good job. He's trying. It's a tough job.
Will the mayor bulldoze this through anyway without talking to anybody?
Again, it remains to be seen. I think if we come up with alternative plans, the mayor said he would listen. So I think, in the city council, many of my colleagues believe that we should have a seat at procurement, and that's what I've been working with Stephen Banks on.
Thank you, Councilman Bob Holden, live in the studio. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Great
so
to have
much,
you
Joe.
in your live. Appreciate it. Frankie Five Bros, thanks for bringing the
Okay.
councilman in.